Hello, British literature students. Welcome to the 8th week of the 2017 spring semester. This will mark the halfway point. So when we get to the end of this week, we'll be halfway through the actual semester. So, 2 readings this week. They're kind of lengthy, but I think you're going to enjoy both of them. One is a short story, one's a poem. The short story is by Elizabeth Gaskell. Most people that know Elizabeth Gaskell know her for her Industrial Revolution work, mostly her novels such as North and South and Mary Barton. But what you're going to see here is something very interesting, which is a ghost story. Now, if you read the introduction to Gaskell, you'll know that she was one of Charles Dickens' favorite writers. Charles Dickens was the king of writing in the Victorian period. The only reason we don't read him is because our anthology does not have any short stories by him, because he just didn't write that many. He was a novelist. So as a result, we don't get a chance to read any Dickens this semester. But if you do like Dickens, there are plenty of novels to choose from. But in addition to being an author, Dickens was also the editor of a literary magazine. So what you need to know about that is that Gaskell often published in Dickens's literary magazines, and she was one of his favorite writers. In fact, you'll see in the introduction to her that he called her his little Scheherazade, which is essentially the storyteller from 1001 Arabian Nights. So that's high praise coming from the master of the Victorian novel to call Gaskell on par with Scheherazade. So think about this. The reason that you get a ghost story is because ghost stories are very popular in Victorian fiction, particularly around Christmas time. These publications, like Charles Dickens' publications, would often put out a Christmas number that had ghost stories. So they didn't really celebrate Halloween back then. Their ghost stories were told during Christmas time. So Gaskell's Christmas number for one of the years was the nurse's story, the story that you're going to be reading for this week. What I really want you to pay attention to, though, is how people can have regrets and how the actions of one's youth can haunt them throughout adulthood and even into old age, which is what's going to happen to Miss Furnival in this story. So think about how one's actions can be very, very haunting to one, not just when they happen, but on through life, even if they live for decades beyond the actions that they regret. It also haunts the mansion that the story takes place in. So that's something to think about as well, is how the house is particularly haunted by the actions of Miss Furnival when she was much younger, and how that's going to come back and not only haunt her, but also the young girl and the nurse that was taking care of the young girl, Miss Rosamund. Rosamund being the young girl, of course. How the nurse, Esther, is affected, and little Rosamund is affected by the actions of Miss Furnival that happened long before either one of those two were born. So, that's old nurse's story. Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. It was a cautionary tale for young girls to resist temptation. The parallels between Goblin Market and Garden of Eden are going to be so obvious. You cannot read Goblin Market and not have your mind go back to this Garden of Eden story and how Eve gave into temptation and the consequences for that essentially being death, right? The things that we are being taught in church is that because of Eve and Adam given into temptation and tasting from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, our penalty is going to be death, and will be for ourselves and our children and our children's children and on down through all of humanity. So that's going to factor into Goblin Market as well. And then take a look at how the older sister works as a Christ-like figure to redeem her younger sister. and I can never keep straight which one of those two is the older and younger. But as you read the poem, it'll become evident to you. The younger sister is going to be the one that gives into the temptation, while the older sister is a bit wiser and a bit sure of not giving into temptation. But she's going to get tempted very hard. In fact, she's actually going to take a lot of abuse for not giving into that temptation at some point. But that abuse she takes is going to end up redeeming the younger sister. So she's kind of a Christ-like figure. If you figure that Jesus, if you're a Christian and you believe that Jesus hung on the cross to redeem us for our sins so that we can all go to heaven someday, the older sister in Goblin Market is going to serve that same purpose for the younger sister. So you've got the Garden of Eden parallels that are going to be very evident. You've got the Christ-like figure that's going to be very evident. And I think that when you do that posting, that should be an easy one for you. So those are the two readings for this week. I hope you enjoyed them. Remember, now next week is spring break, so you won't get a video from me next week, nor will you get any reading assignments or anything of that nature. So get those readings done, get those postings done, and enjoy your spring break next week, if I don't hear from you between now and then.